All right.
Okay.
Howdy, everybody. Paul
Hey,
Vikas, good to see
JGP.
you guys.
Hey,
God,
Paul.
good.
Hey, Vikas.
It'll be funny if I say
Hello.
something. Every time we have this call, I had to take my daughter to dentist appointment. It's, it's so funny, so I have to log out in 20 minutes. My apologies.
I'm I'm
That's
I'm I'm really sorry that I wonder if it's a causality or a consequence or anything. I'm sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
it's
Not
all
fun.
right. I'd love to be seeing you guys and listen to all of you, but I could be mute.
Hi, folks.
How do
Hey,
you do?
Julia.
Long time no see, Yulia.
Hi, Julia. Yeah, that's it.
We just had a call a little bit earlier.
Oh,
So yeah, JGP, you kind of chose the topic for today in general of agile and data. Oh, hey, Olivier. Um, So what are your what do you think of your definition of agile? Like, do you think of this as
ah,
capital A agile? Do you think about this as being agile? Do you like this is one of those things where it can really get if anybody's familiar with Shane Gibson, the kind of goofy guy from New Zealand, he really likes to talk about this topic because it gets super complex, but it's also not at the same point. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on it, and we can get into safe and things like that as well. But like, are you thinking about capital A agile? Or are you thinking about being agile? What are your thoughts there?
I think I'm for the capital A agile. And yeah, I think if you're in the capital A agile, then you're agile. Okay, so it's not about so a lot of times when you're thinking about people that just say, "Hey, are you agile?" It means that there's. I've heard so many times being agile. There's no methodologies. There's no practice. There's no. It's just like, okay, we're agile. We can change all the time. When customers just ask something else, we just switch because we're agile. And I don't think just that's too easy, right? There's agile with the uppercase because you need to be a little bit methodic as well.
Well,
And
and I think one of the conversations that comes from this is, are people focused on the outcomes or are they focused on the methodologies? And that people can become overly obsessed with the actual um, implementation of agile or the exact ceremonies and things like that versus reading up on the agile manifesto. And this is, Jamax talked about, we were considering doing a data mesh manifesto. But like, I didn't really want to be as involved in that, but the the ideas of agile versus the way that a lot of people implement is that they become so obsessed with doing stand-ups because stand-ups is agile versus the output of what's the point of
So,
agile. So
I'll
um
give you my thoughts, Scott, on this one. So there's different camps, right? So if you look at agile coaches, they're all about methodologies. Whether you're doing it right, you have stand up, you have product coach, you have coach, and all of that, right? But if you look at CDO and CIO perspective, they all care about outcomes. So I think it's a crossroad between these two, I believe. And every PI planning, there's a big hunch about, I think every PI planning and out should be outcome driven basis. And that's where you throw the word of, WSJF and RACI and all that, and people try to come, okay, which one should we pick first so that we can get a greater outcome from the result and show the value from the whatever we're working on. So I think it's a crossroad and it has to be a balanced approach in my view.
yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with JGP talking as well that there are methodologies, so you don't just go, we're agile now, and
Yeah.
that it's like we're now agile. But this obsession with ceremonies, it's funny because Shane Gibson is actually somewhat of a coach, but he's like, he hates general agile coaching because exactly what you said of this idea that you must have these methodologies instead of training the team to think in an agile way, and that you bring in these processes and they're good until they're not, right? That's product thinking. Agile is about product thinking and doing what is good until it's no longer valuable. But, you know, that's a really tough concept, especially in data where, you know, if you don't have the structure around it, it seems to lead to chaos. So, I mean, how do you think about having that conversation with your teams about like, hey, we're actually trying to accomplish something instead of do agile?
My 2 cents on coaching is that, and I've seen that in a few companies that I've was consulting, not as an agile coach, but I've seen that a lot of companies were interested in doing this agile transformation and this agile mindset. One way is you bring in the coach. Yes, the coach is going to be painful and ceremonies and blah 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 and all those things, right? But you've got to kind of set a pendulum going in a way. You know, when you're going from waterfall, let's go a little bit more into, oh, okay, this super methodic way of doing agile, because when the coach removes, the pendulum is going to be back to that. Okay, so for example, Scrum Masters. Okay, I've seen some companies, yes, they need Scrum Master at the beginning, and then the team lead can become the Scrum Master, because the thing is, they can do it depending on the maturity. So I think it's really a question of where do you stand in your maturity process of agile. And yeah, and I think so the key thing when you're thinking about agile is just not the flexibility of swinging from one project to another, but really about the value you provide. And the things of value can be identified as a product. Okay, so that's where I would circle back to, whether it's software or data, you're looking at value, and the value is achieved through products.
Yeah, I think I like that idea of it's okay to swing too far in one direction with the idea that you're overcorrecting, right? JP Morgan Chase, Yushin Sun talked about this on a panel that I had, where we were talking about they overcorrected on decentralizing, and they went with all their teams went to fully decentralized, and then they found some teams that were just too small or didn't have enough data where it made sense for them to fully own their data, and they came back to having kind of centralized data teams that would look after 5 or 6 of those smaller teams. And so I think that's an interesting perspective, because I'm assuming you've implemented this yourself as well.
Yeah, I think it's about, mature LOBs versus non-mature LOBs. So you have to support them as well, right? So I think that's about it, right? But at the same time, I think as JGP was saying, I think I have been in multiple companies, multiple ceremonies. I think one thing people start to, maybe after 3-4 PI, they start to realize, where is the value coming from? We're spending too much time in just ceremonies. I think we have to realize value from these. I think that's where now the pendulum shift towards, oh, we need to start thinking about value, because we've been running this PI for that long, but we're not seeing real outcomes. We are not generating business values. So I think that's where the coach and everybody gets together and find out, okay, what ceremonies make sense to do, and also how do we derive the values and show progress in this journey.
Well, and I think what you said as well of the different maturity levels of the lines of business is important, because you can't have this rubber stamp. You can't say that this is going to be perfect for everybody. So, Yulia, you got your hand up.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, I'm coming from the product manager background, right? So I started my career already in Agile team. So it was in the middle of transition, and I was acting as a Scrum Master, basically, and a product manager simultaneously. And at this point, when I'm running my company, I'm interacting with data engineers daily. We don't have any Scrum. We do have ceremonies, but we don't treat that as ceremonies. All we care is about shipped software that actually helps customers. And this is very agile, about Agile Manifesto. So what I wanted to tell from my experience, that Scrum as a methodology caused 2 things to teams. first, very fast burnout. Second, hyperfixation on done tasks, like on the score of those tasks, which in the end of the day didn't give them opportunity to be creative and to put some extra thoughts in those tasks, because they were really much fixed on the point to make things done according to the requirements. And basically that was it. Like, okay, it's not working as I expected. We don't care because you product manager and you put that in Jira like this, and we literally don't care. And I was like, it's not helping our customers. This is your fault. Was a very, conversation I would have with with engineers back then. So unfortunately, Scrum could be sort of corrupt. And that's why I'm not a fan of that methodology. Rather to be more human-centric, which is all Agile about, in terms of the way we interact with the team and work with the team. What I found beneficial when team take ownership and leadership for the tasks. And that comes very much from maturity of individuals who you work with. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And you're talking about especially how many story points did you complete? I
don't care about that at all. It doesn't make any value for the customers. We need just to skip about that. Nobody cares about story point. This is the point.
Well, it's you optimize to what's measured. And if what you're measuring is story points instead of value delivery, story points are supposed to equate in some form or fashion to value delivery, but they often don't. Yeah.
Never will. You cannot equate, because sometimes you ship the feature which is supposed to generate you X amount of money, and it doesn't work that way. It just helps you to hook the customer for the initial conversation, and it not necessarily bringing the value to those customers, but help you start the conversation. How do you attribute the value to that feature in that case? It's not happening because nothing is linear. And this is a point where I put people first who I work with and make them take the ownership and leadership of the tasks they are doing. Because if I put the task like we need ABCD and I want it to perform like this, they will come back to me saying, Yulia, it's not going to work the best way. We need to put it a little bit like this. It's going to take us this extra amount of time, presumably, but it's going to be more value to our customers. When they get into the conversation where they are not biased about story points and time and willing to take and do their best, this is much more beneficial to the business, and this is much more agile. And
it's all about outcome, right? Like it's what is the value of the outcome, because it's but a lot of people, when you try and explain to them what you're trying to achieve, still can kind of try and cling to that, okay, but tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do instead of what I'm supposed to achieve, and we work to get there together. I think that's where you need to hire the right people, but when you treat people like adults, they behave like adults, right?
And this is what about GGP said. Maturity of the processes, but I would also include maturity of the individuals who you work with. And this is pretty much it. And like when it comes, to hiring in our startup, which is not a huge enterprise, obviously, I'm looking for these particular two things, leadership and ownership. I'm not evaluating them on the tech skills, because this is always could be gained. But if they cannot take the responsibility of the things they're going to ship, it just doesn't matter what kind of perfect tech skills they have. It just doesn't matter in the end of the day.
Yeah, they're not delivering value, they're delivering code.
Exactly.
Yeah. Paul, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of that's kind of where I'm at with what Yulia was just talking about, where a lot of the people that kind of work with me, they're more of kind of like the old school. So we're trying to transition their thinking to like, what is the actual outcomes that we're delivering? Not like, what are the specific tasks that you need to do? That is probably the biggest and most difficult part of any type of agile journey is just to get everybody to change their thinking and change their mindset. Because I could lift out word for word exactly, hey, go build this, and I want you to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And yeah, great, it would work, but obviously I don't have enough time to do that for every single task. I need the people to be able to kind of think through, not just do this, think through what are we actually trying to accomplish and get to that point themselves.
Well, and you don't have sometimes a lot of the visibility into exactly what would be the best solution.
Yeah.
So you have to unlock them understanding that it's their job to find the better solution.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we've got Olivier's got his hand up. He's doing a walk and talk.
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to add something. As you know, I come from the operational world as opposed to the analytical world. And what I'm thinking about Agile is that is being really useful when you're in the space of exploration. Some of you folks are talking about startups, and it is exactly the way where Agile is used as its best, is when the outcome is something that you want to explore and to build iteratively. On the other side, when you have a quite huge company with quite a big amount of data in place, and you want to organize it, even if you want to mesh it, maybe Agile is not the way to go. The Agile with a big A. I'm not talking about scrums and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say, it's very good when you're trying to build something from the very beginning, when you're in explorative space. So when you try to define your data product, maybe Agile is very good because you can go iteratively to ask about to get the feedback from the users, and you build something that is quite good. It can go the same if you want to build basic data contracts within the company. But once the data contract is in place, Agile is not the way to go to maintain it. This is my opinion. This is why I try to apply in the operational world, and I guess that it is the same in the analytical world.
Interesting perspective, because I rarely hear people that say go from Agile to not Agile. Are you saying that we should go waterfall then? Like, or what happens after? What is your post Agile world?
For example, if you're going to something that is industrialized, methods like Six Sigma or in between the lean development, which is, you can say it's an extension of Agile. I would agree, but it's not Agile by the book. So if you go into product thinking, you can apply Agile lean methods. And if you're in the pure industrialized world, you can use the Six Sigma or other methods that can be useful. I take this from the as a lesson from the worldly mapping of our community I'm following, and there is good documentation and good articles about this. I can point you the links afterwards if you want.
Sounds good. Julio, you've got your hand up, and then after that, I want to hear from JGP. I haven't heard from you in quite a bit, JGP. Thank you, Olivier. It's an interesting perspective.
Olivia, I want to just ask this question. You mentioned that still not going too agile, right? To make sure that things are working as expected, and to basically to control the execution in a enterprise size company. You don't want necessarily to have that agile, right? And I get this point, but also what you mentioned, that you want those people to have product thinking, and product thinking literally requires lots of ownership and leadership to push things through, sometimes to make prioritization like that. That's a lot about Agile. Meanwhile, having product thinking is literally about Agile to make things work for the customers. And this is basically what you're saying contradicts, for me at least. So yeah, like refusing to go Agile, but still make sure that your teams have product thinking.
No, I don't. Yeah, sorry, I may have not used a good word. I not refuse to go Agile. For product thinking, when you're going to something that is exploratory, you want to build a product as a solution to something. Agile is, according to me, the way to go. But if you have a big company with and the outcome you're trying to achieve by industrializing the data within your company to extract value, maybe Agile is not the way to go. I mean, there may be, if you have a data in place already and you want to manage this data, you want to put some governance rules, maybe Agile is not the best way to get the value from your existing data as is. Agile is the way to go if you want to get more value, maybe go at scale by applying product thinking. I agree with you. But if you have something already in place, maybe Agile is not the answer to everything. It depends of the company. Maybe big companies may not move towards a journey to build a lot of data products. You just want to urbanize the data. Maybe Agile is not the way to go. Maybe I say.
Okay.
First, Olivier, as you walk around, you should tell us where you are, because it's very interesting to see the background. I don't know if you're in Paris or so. It looks like it's a nice day over there. But I like what I like that by what you're saying by domain, okay, or by department or by goal, you don't have the same methodology, and that completely makes sense. Okay, so I wouldn't limit Agile to exploratory, because exploratory means really something specific, but I would say, it's a bit like the myth of DevOps. Okay, are we really towards DevOps, or are we just trying to have the developers do more? And the thing is, when you've got the developer, developing a product, and because it's not a 2 weeks thing in a way, it's not, oh, I'm going to build my product in a sprint. Okay, so I think that where the idea of splitting in sprints and combining these sprints eventually in PIs and things like that makes sense when you're building something. When you're at the pure ops level, I agree with you that I don't think Agile, some of the agility could be used. Okay, for example, Kanban is great for that, but it's coming also from the industrial world, from the Toyota world, right? So I think it's good to think like that it's not a solution for everything, but so when you're maturing and when you're already in production and really having the ops thinking, then I kind of agree that I'm not sure that Agile would be a good use there. You can still have some methodologies there, but not something like SAFe, for example. But when you're building, however, when you're building a platform, like if you're building or implementing a data mesh platform, or Julia, when you're building your tools, I think that here having something like methodology would like Agile methodology would be of great use. What you were saying, just Julia, I wanted to go back to what you were saying at the beginning, that just measuring story points and things like that. I've seen some tyranny in Agile as well. Okay, and I think that's what you were describing is a bit of like the tyranny of some people in Agile, like, just do this number of points or whatever. And that's where I think it's maybe a little bit misplaced by the Scrum Master or the product owner or the team lead that just wants to, hey, let's crack down these points, okay? Because and still, just defining a point to a developer, to a junior developer, is always funny. What is it? Not time? You're not measuring time with points. So, but anyway, the whole thing there. I think Agile's there. There's some bad ways of doing Agile, but if you're doing it the right way, like you were describing, Julia, and especially if you've got a more mature team, I think that's the way to go. Okay, so call it SAFe, Scrum, XP, or whatever. I think it's just the name of the methods, and you adapt it to your need on the team. Okay, so I like SAFe myself.
I know SAFe in data is something that many people really hate. So I want to get to that in a second. But Vikas, I know you've got to drop here in a second.
Yeah.
You had your hand up. I wanted to also ask you as well in all of this, how do you communicate this up to leadership about, hey, we're implementing agile, but it's got to be a little bit different for everybody and all of that. If you could wrap that into what you're thinking about.
I will wrap quickly. I had to drop, but I think data itself, you look at it, it's a journey, right? So initially you start building platform. Agile may not be the right mechanism to check the progress and then so you might have to horses for courses at that time, okay, we're building the foundation right now. But I think when you start building product in 10 different and 12 different teams, I think Agile is the right manifest to check the cross dependencies and see the progress and make the outcome basis. Stories and features, whatever you want to call it. And I think what we manifest and deliver message to leadership is outcome. And in this PI, this is the outcome you're going to produce. I think, and the story level and points and how large is the story, all stays within the team level. I don't think so. They need to bubble out to the leadership level. All leadership level, they all care about it. Okay, in this sprint, in this PI, this is what we're going to deliver. This is what the product look like after this PI, and this is the business value we're going to capture from this PI. And this is what I have seen at least. But I'll tell you what, at Cap One, and I can say the name here, we had 15 different teams working on at a large train at a safe methodologies. And it was very good for all of us to get in a room and have a card. So we actually use the card and Safe Agile and cross out the cross dependencies. So if Scott, your team in working on something which I have a dependency, I can communicate and manifest to you at that time, and we participate in your Scrum calls. So that way you can manage the dependencies better. And I think Agile works really well in that scenarios.
Yeah, I think a lot of what's coming through here, and Andrea just dropped a figure as well into the chat, is we'd love if it were just this is the way to do everything, but everything has its puts and takes, and you have to, if you're going to continue to use Agile into that industrialization aspect, you have to understand its puts and takes, and you have to correct for them. It can still work, but it starts to look less and less like Agile. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you got to drop. So
yeah,
if you do, you gotta. It's okay.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah. So, Olivier, JGP, I'd love to hear kind of what your reactions are around this, and then Paul is somebody who's actually like kind of doing this right now as well. Of how are you helping people to think about outcome-based decisions when you're just starting to get them focused on data in general and doing data work. So I'd love to kind of bounce around whatever anybody wants to talk about, but there's a whole lot here.
Yeah, there's a lot. Olivier or Julia, go ahead.
I just had a very funny conversation last week with data engineer who happened to share with me, said, when it comes to data products and ensuring that something is working, like what is used, he needs to go and to talk to those teams. And he was like, I don't necessarily want to do that. And I was like, but do you recognize this is the only way you can deliver something and make sure your work appreciated as well, just to start connecting with people and make sure you contribute to make them succeed, which is going to reinforce your work as well. And he was like, not sure. No, I'm not going to do it. That's it, period. And this is very much about having that culture of Agile. I really emphasize this is a lot about culture in a team and mindset they have about working with data and who are they delivering, just learning who are the data consumers and how they can help them.
But Julia, I just want to do my job. I just want to, I want to be a code monkey. I just want to do the code, not I want to deliver to outcomes. So no, I don't want to do that.
Scott, this is the point of the culture. Exactly. This is where the person cannot take the ownership of the things they are doing. And this is what not reinforcing his team. This is not a top priority in his team. The top priority is performing against the score. Like, this is a lot about gamification. You got your points, you did a great job. And we don't necessarily care who benefits from it.
That's this is that thing of
This is like, I was so much impressed. This is the literally talk I had. The person confessed that he doesn't want to talk to anyone.
which then at least you have a place to start from. But yeah, like McKinsey just put out, I think, something about measuring developer productivity, and everybody's just like, oh no, because it's so much about here's the formula versus what are you trying to achieve. And it's like IBM way back in the day where they measured lines of code, right? You, as an engineer, you were supposed to develop lines of code versus some really great engineers will have a net negative code contribution of, hey, I eliminated 100 lines of code and added 2 lines, and it does the same thing, or it does the same thing more performantly or better or more safely, more reliably. So Paul, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, so I mean, along the same lines, it's very much, you got to know your team as well. So getting to know, like, that person doesn't want to talk to somebody. So when I'm working with different people in the team, there's some people that I know I can be like, yeah, just go talk to the user, figure out what they're really trying to do. I literally actually had that conversation last night. Like, I'm not going to bother you. Go figure out, talk to them, get them, because she's building it and he knows what he wants. So, talk together and figure out what it is you're really trying to achieve so we can build that piece that they're looking for. Then other people I know, like, if I were to say that to some other person, it'd be more along the lines of what Yulia just was talking about. I don't really want to go talk to that person. I want to just be off on my own. So you got to kind of tailor what you're doing and how you're talking based on the person that you're talking to. The other thing that I try and do is because a lot of my team is a lot more junior than I am, and I know a lot of different areas. So when I try and like switch hats, and I don't just do it from one to the other. So like if we're talking about planning and what we're trying to accomplish, I leave that open. But then if they have questions and like want to dig into exactly how to build something, I won't have that conversation at the same time. Well, I'll do like a different separate meeting, and I'll go, okay, now I'm going to put on, my developer hat, and this is how I would write it. I would go, start laying out different pieces of how I might do it to try and separate, like, this is the goal, like, this is the outcome. We're trying to build this. This is what we're doing. And then the other one, almost treat it more like a peer, more like peer programming type thing. Just sit with them, kind of figure out how to actually build it. So developing skills versus objectives.
Well, one thing that I would ask in all of this, especially for you, Paul, and Yulia, as since you're such a product manager type, what happens when people don't know what they want as the outcome? Like, when Olivier was talking about exploratory and things like that. Is Agile the right way to frame the conversations? Is it not the right way to frame the conversations? Is it not really relevant? Am I asking the wrong question? Like, this becomes if we know what outcome we want, then let's iteratively get there. But how do we know what we want and stuff? So Yulia, your eyebrows went way up and your hand went up immediately. But and Olivier, thanks for the contributions. Save your battery in case you're lost in Lille. We don't want you to get lost.
So this is actually one of the most hardest questions for the product manager to figure out if there are a motivation for users actually to use the product. And this is very much one of the hardest things, and to tap on that. So and this is where the product manager role comes in, because you need to prioritize things accordingly to the motivation of users to use, and you just genuinely ask questions and look for the signals that those customers, in our case the data consumers, really want to use. So one of the first questions that I always try to ask, what do you do now? Literally tell me. Like, you need some data, and if you really need it, you're going to scrap it manually. let's say, you know, they will log in, they will buzz people, you know, they will find a way to access that, maybe not in full, maybe not in the best shape, whatever, but they will be doing something towards it. And this is literally the baseline to check the motivation of using it. If they meh around like meh, like you don't need to do that. The other question basically, and it's not necessarily an internal question, would you be willing to pay at least $1 for this? If this solution going to cost $1, are you going to pay for it $1 and use it? This is a very much powerful question. It doesn't mean 100% necessarily they're going to use it, but if they say yes, and the way they say, you also look at them as they hesitating. What is the follow-up question? Because this is such a weird question to ask. Would you pay $1 to use it? You frame the solution and you look at them, they're going to be puzzled. The yes can come like in a second, but if the yes is coming in 2 seconds, not in minute, there is also a part of hesitation. And all you need is to measure that hesitation of using this future product. And this is basically on the level of conversation to measure the motivation to use the solution.
I think I think you're describing a few tactics which are really interesting. But you know, going back a little bit to the idea of agile in data, which we didn't really oppose, and I don't think we won't have really the times there. But the thing is, I just wanted to share an experience I went through a few years ago, where it was I saw the transformation using SAFe of a company where they started with 3 teams using SAFe, and they went up to 35 teams. And for those familiar with SAFe, you've got trains. So they had 1 train, they had to split it to have 2 trains. So and it was very interesting to see how the team scaled. Okay, so there's a lot of things which apply. You know, you can cheat and trick a little bit when you're 5 people in a team. Okay, when you're a 1 pizza team, or eventually 2 teams. But when you're 35 teams and you're splitting your trains, I think it's becoming really interesting to see what you've got to do. Okay, so I think it's a little bit going back to what, and I loved what Olivier was saying, that about, you know, where do you want to apply agile? Okay, so I think if we're into the building of something, agile is great, and it could be building of data products. Okay, if it's but it doesn't have to be a sprint. It could be, so for example, what I've seen is also when you're just building data products, whether it's a data product with a big D and a big P, okay, or just data sets, the idea of just having a Kanban can be easy. It's still agile. You don't have to go through all the sprints, pointing, blah blah blah. You just move them along. Okay, so just to know where people are and what they're doing, and not to add extra pressure, as you were saying, Julia, about, hey, I want my points. Okay, so I think there's a lot of different things, and it's really a very interesting discussion that maybe we should continue at another point. What do you think, Scott? So and maybe I know the person you I don't know the person personally, but I know of the person you mentioned, but maybe we should try to invite them, which is not going to be easy if they are in New Zealand this time, but
Yeah, he's got an Agile and data podcast and stuff like that, because applying Agile to data is very difficult because people are even more used to very rigid ways of working, very rigid answers of, you know, but if you're an order taker in data, then Agile may not be the best place. But if you're focused on outcomes, then it can really help. But and I'm actually a little scared of industrialization of data related work, because what I find is data product factories. I find these things where the point is to create data products instead of the point of data products is to create a way to encapsulate information to share in a scalable and reliable way, and that the value is that you're encapsulating and sharing important information. And so like I get concerned about if we do industrialization of, the Six Sigma type approaches and stuff in data work, does that lead just to the same exact outcome of we're not focused on outcomes, we're focused on outputs? And so it's something that I'd love to talk about more, because I'm not smart enough on this. I kind of get what questions to ask, but I haven't seen enough to say that this makes any sense one way or another. So I really enjoyed this conversation because we had multiple different perspectives, but also we didn't come across as a very specific answer, but we all kind of agreed at the end on a lot of the basics, even though we might not have used the exact same language about what's the best approach coming in. That's kind of what I took from this. I don't know if you've got outputs that you took from this conversation as well, JGP.
No, I think it would be interesting to explore that part as well. Okay, so where does it take us? Okay, and where are we going from there? I think you nailed it. It's the maturity. I think it's coming back to the maturity of the different teams. And I've been okay. We all kind of a little bit motivated by data mesh, but the thing is, I think I've seen somewhere, but maybe it's time to revisit some kind of a maturity model for teams around data mesh. Like, hey, I want what are kind of best practices? Because I'm completely convinced that, and I haven't talked to Jean-Marc about it, but she's coming from a school where she worked with the founder of Agile, one of the fathers of Agile, okay, Martin Fowler. And the thing is, there must have some influence from this Agile mindset into data mesh. Okay, so I don't want to speak for her. That's not what I'm saying here. But the thing is, there is this influence. Okay, and there, so how does it relate? How do we make it better? Is there a safe version 5.5 that we need to work with them to include data best practices? I just don't know. Okay, so I think we're opening more questions than actually giving answers today, but it might be interesting to see where this conversation will bring us in the future.
Very much so. I think that's a great place to wrap.
Guys, thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to the one running out of battery. And we'll meet next week. We're on a good track now. Okay. So bye-bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.